Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes, give folks a chance to jump on. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for jumping on here today. We're going to give folks about another minute to join. We've got a number of people still jumping on. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I am excited to welcome you to our conversation today, Improving CPG Product Discoverability and Conversion on the Digital Shelf. I'm Lauren Gibbons, and I'm part of our marketing team at Label Insight. I'll be your host today. And on behalf of all of us here at Label Insight and our partners at Salsify, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you spending this time with us today. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get going. This webinar is being recorded, so you'll receive an email with a link to view that recording within 24 hours after the webinar. Since we have a large group today, you're an attendee in listen-only mode on Zoom, and we'll use that Q&A feature at the bottom middle panel of your screen for questions. So go ahead and pop your question in there at any point throughout the webinar, and we'll be monitoring that Q&A. And we'll save time at the end of the session to answer those questions. If we're not able to get to your question, we'll get back to you with an answer via email within 24 hours. If you have any technical issues, use that raise hand feature. Again, it's in the middle bottom panel of your screen, and one of us will chat you directly to help you resolve that. Finally, we'd love to hear from you after the webinar. So if a question pops up today after you leave, reach out anytime to marketing@labelinsight.com, and we'll make sure your question gets answered again via email. So welcome to our e-commerce community. Together with Salsify, we're excited you're here, and you're in really good company. Over 400 of you are here, and you're representing the brightest and most innovative brands in the CPG landscape across verticals. So we have representation from food and bev and personal care and alcohol, household cleaning. And I know I speak for my colleagues at Label Insight and at Salsify. We get so excited when we're able to get a group together like this. You know, you're all passionate e-commerce professionals and all facing similar issues. So we look forward to getting to talk through those together with you today. Your presenters today are Saira Anwar and SJ Pederuti. Saira leads product for the CPG content solutions here at Label Insight. She's really passionate about helping brands connect with their consumers in innovative ways. She works with top CPG brands like Clorox, Conagra, Bimbo, and her team builds solutions to enable brands to win on the digital shelf with enriched content driven by insights. And SJ leads go-to-market for Salsify. He's been studying consumer behavior trends for over a decade. He's worked at Salsify and Syndigo and Cellpoints and Tapjoy. And in addition to working for software companies whose names begin with the letter S, He enjoys advising brands on how to develop direct-to-consumer routes to market and product data optimization strategies. These two are really experts in CPG, so I'm excited for you to hear this conversation. SJ, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you give us a quick overview of what Salsify does in case any of our audience isn't familiar?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. I'd be happy to. Well, welcome everybody, and it's great to be here to talk to you a little bit today about discoverability and conversion using Label Insight and Salsify. Like Lauren said, I just wanted to give you some quick background in case you're not familiar with Salsify and tell you a little bit about where we come from and what we really focus on. So we were the first company really to recognize that brands need to have a more flexible system and a way to manage and syndicate their product data out to all the different places where you're making those products available for purchase. So we saw, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, that essential product data was scattered throughout lots of different parts of a brand's organization. Updating and optimizing that content was very time consuming, and publishing that data to the retail product pages was difficult, if not impossible, without having an automated platform to do it with. And so that's really where we started to develop what we call the Commerce XM, which is allowing brands to win on the digital shelf really by focusing on 5 key feature differentiations. We believe that in order to build those superior brand experiences, you should have one central source of truth to manage all of that data. Salsify offers that for you. But it's not just about storing that data. We're going to talk a lot about how important it is to be able to work with your colleagues across different departments in the organization. And so we developed a system of holistic collaborative workflows that allowed teams to connect in order to actually do the optimization and publishing of that content. We are one of the only systems on the market that can offer you engagement to every type of commerce channel where you'd be wanting to send your product data so that your product pages can be visible for purchase. We're talking about retail websites, direct-to-consumer websites, social commerce sites. We offer connections even to third-party types of applications. So anywhere you want to send product data, Salsify has a solution to get that content out there for you. And then we're really big into thought leadership. This webinar is a good case example of that. We like to partner with other thought leaders in our space to make sure that you as a brand manufacturer understand what the best practices are, because this is an industry that is changing very quickly. And in that spirit, we like to build our development of our platform for future proofing. So we are a multi-tenant SaaS software platform, allowing you to expand using Salsify as your business on e-commerce continues to expand as well. So with that being said, Sarah, I'll turn it over to you, talk a little bit more about Label Insight.
Thanks, SJ. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with Label Insight, we're the world's leading provider of product attribute metadata. We essentially have the broadest catalog of attributes in the market with tens of thousands of attributes on each product. And we use this data to help retailers and brands grow through content, insights, and activation. We're trusted by over 30,000 brands and 350 retail banners. And organizations like the FDA and USDA actually use us as their source of product metadata truth. We're really excited to partner with Salsify to improve your ability to leverage our metadata and Salsify's platform to drive e-commerce growth. So with that, we can talk about what we're going to be focusing on in today's conversation. So we'll walk you through the hidden risks and opportunities for brands caused by digital disruption. We'll talk about some of the barriers that brands are facing and how they can tap into new data and distribution strategies, and overall just how you can improve your e-commerce discoverability and conversion across retail channels.
All right, it's exciting stuff. Let's jump right into it. Probably a good place to start is really getting an understanding of the size of the prize here. What is the opportunity to win on the digital shelf, and what does that actually look like? Sarah, some really great statistics coming out from Label Insight about size of the prize. Can you tell us a little bit more about what we're seeing here on the screen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we're seeing is that the demand for the digital shelf is certainly there. So I'm sure many of you have seen this growth even in your own businesses. So in grocery alone, you've seen $113 billion in retail e-commerce sales in the last year. That's 101% of all retail gains in the last year. So when you think about all other channels like stores, catalogs, and call centers, those sales actually declined. So this is the first time in history that e-commerce sales accounted for all retail sales gains. And you can see that trend on the shopper side as well. So in March 2021 alone, there were 69 million active online grocery shoppers. So basically a third of all shoppers ordered grocery items online for in-store pickup. That's a difference of 300% from what it was in August 2019. So definitely we've seen a huge rise of shoppers online. And in fact, a third of shoppers have actually shopped online for grocery for the first time in the last year, and 90% of them continue to plan to do so. So we know that not only is this trend growing, but it's here to stay.
And I think, I mean, just to think about the fact that all retail growth last year was driven by e-commerce. It's really kind of incredible. And what's important to note about it is that there's some fundamental differences with how you as a brand want to be thinking about your strategy for in-store versus your strategy online. And one of the most important things to understand is just how those dollars that are being flooded into e-commerce and how that growth is being captured really ends up being captured at the top of the retail product search pages. So why is this important? Well, more product discovery now online is done through retail websites using their search features than anywhere else on the internet. That means it's not Google, it's not Facebook. People come to sites like Amazon and Walmart.com and they start to look for products there using the search features. What you're looking at here is a statistic that says 64% of shoppers on Amazon will choose one of the first 3 products that comes up on those retail search result pages. And it's even more concentrated than that. In fact, 35% of shoppers are going to be focused and clicking on the very first product that comes up in the search result pages. And so, we're going to talk now about how important it is to make sure that your entire e-commerce strategy is built around winning the algorithm for these search engines so that you can make sure that your brands are the ones that are coming up in those top spots so you can be capturing this online market share. Winning these algorithms is really key to winning your e-commerce market strategy. And so it gets down to a couple of different tactics here. And Saira, maybe you can talk to us a little bit more about how consumers are using these search functions and how that's changed compared to your in-store experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you, SJ. In today's e-commerce world, you have to win the algorithm. And to win the algorithm, you need data. And it's not just any kind of data. We find that consumers have changed the way that they fundamentally shop today. So 81% of searches for online grocery, for instance, are unbranded. 2/3 of the US population, that's as many people who have licenses in the United States, are actually shopping based off of a diet or health-related eating program or have an allergy or intolerance that impacts the way they shop. And so what we think about this at Label Insight is as need states. So essentially consumers are thinking about things like sugar-free snacks or low sodium bread when they're actually shopping online. So
yeah, I mean, I was just going to add to that, when you're in store, you think about the limited space you have on the shelves. You also can think about the fact that a consumer will walk into the store and they will immediately see branded products. That's not the same when you're talking about a consumer going online. There are no shelves for them to just see the labels and see the brands for. And so I think this is a natural way that a consumer would evolve their experiences. They're starting to look based on attributes. They're not looking for, the Tide detergent. They're looking for the aroma-free detergent or the hyperallergenic formulas, the things that are going to suit their specific needs.
Exactly. Yeah. And, if you go to the next slide, what we find as an issue in the market today is, consumers are definitely shopping by these need states, but it's not the data that's easily available. And brands don't actually have a lot of this data at their fingertips today. We actually did an audit of a top retailer as an example to kind of understand, for their top product attribute searches by consumers, what are the actual product results that come up? And we found that 92% of products were missing from the retailer search results, even though the retailer had those products in their assortment. So then we tried to figure out what's going on the brand side. And we found that 51% of food products actually fail to claim their single most searched attribute. And that actually amounts to 84% of food products when you think about the top 3 attributes. So, if we take an example, for instance, keto is the 5th most searched attribute across all food and beverage categories today. but it's unclaimed or missing from about 98% of all products that qualify. That's a huge opportunity for brands to kind of add claims to their products. And if you go to the next slide, you can actually see that this opportunity for better data applies to both organic as well as paid search. So again, when it comes to organic search, if you have an attribute like nitrate-free associated with some of your meat products, you'll actually be showing up in the consumer search results. And if you don't, then you're digitally out of stock.
Yeah, I mean, these are pretty shocking statistics to think about the fact that you as a brand have products that meet these types of attribute searches. Consumers more and more are starting to have refined searches based on these attributes. And we're talking about gaps that are accounting for almost the entire majority of those products, 92% for keto. I mean, that is a little alarming if I was selling keto and that was the position that I would be in. Sarah, in terms of just kind of the raw dollar figures, the money left on the table here, talk to us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So, ultimately, without need state product data, you essentially are missing from certain searches. And we actually audited the top 50 CPG brands, and those missing searches actually amounts to over $100 million just for those top 50 CPG brands. So this is definitely a huge revenue opportunity for brands today.
Yeah, I think that that's the end of the day. There's an incredible opportunity here. Hopefully now you've got a little bit of an understanding of the nature of online experiences for consumers and really kind of where this gap is happening between what a consumer is looking for and what we as an industry are supplying them with. Let's talk about a little bit of what makes all of that so difficult. So what are the barriers today that come with winning on the digital shelf? And we'll then get to what does Label Insight and Salsify provide to help overcome these barriers. Well, the first thing is that, oh, and sorry, I almost forgot. Before we get into what we are going to kind of propose as barriers, we wanted to ask you in the audience, what are your barriers right now with being able to get the right type of product data out to the digital shelf for increasing into your sales? Are you finding that you're dealing with multiple or siloed data sources? Is it a time-consuming process to deliver this content to retailers? Is there just a lack of a system of scale to be able to publish this content? Is it the meeting of the various retailer requirements that is proving difficult for you? Two other options here is keeping the product content current and connected to the consumer need states, the difficulty, making sure that you are staying up to date with those changing attributes. And then lastly, is the content approval delays with regulatory and agency partners the biggest barrier that you perceive in your particular business? So take a couple of minutes here, or not a minute, let's take a couple more seconds here. You can choose as many of these as you would like. And then at the end of discussing all of these different barriers that we at Label Insight and Salsify see at an industry level, we'll come back and reveal the results of this poll. All right, so where do we see the kind of industry challenges happening here when it comes to really winning on the digital shelf? Well, I mentioned this earlier about why Salsify was founded, and it really is the fact that you've got data that is living everywhere and nowhere. There are disparate sources of information. There can be different sources of truth for the same information. All of this happening within a brand's organization. So part of your product content might live with your brand team. The other part of your content might live with your legal team for reviews. You might have an agency that's producing rich media for you. There is, without, again, a system of being able to centralize and organize all of this, a very time-consuming and convoluted process that starts to happen when you talk about getting all of these different teams and sources of data to be coordinated and to have to do this at regular intervals and to have to do this for so many different products to so many different retailers. So obviously, the results of this is, less accurate brand content, longer time to update your product content, all resulting in lower sales, lower market share, and at the end of the day, an eroding customer loyalty. So, if you're not having a pattern and a process to be able to create content quickly, a large part of your business can start to erode as a result of that. And this really is one of the biggest culprits for why product searches based on attributes can come up empty. So Sarah, can you talk to us a little bit more about that kind of the dynamic pace in terms of attribute changes that people have to be considering as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with what you're saying around needing that content strategy to like manage your business as well as loyalty with shoppers. And one of the things that we find in addition to these workflow processes that you're talking about that make this so complex is that the data itself is constantly changing. So for example, we see about 82 attribute changes per year per category on average. And these are things that are driven by different factors. So for example, market trends like celebrities or seasonality or new research. Obviously, the really big example from the last year is the pandemic, where more consumers were searching by things like immune support diet or kills viruses and antibacterial formula. And then, of course, there's also just the factor that brands themselves are leveraging some of these trends and constantly undergoing reformulations and changing their packaging. And so that really makes data change as well. And if you think about that changing data, it really impacts both consumer search habits as well as how retailers think about the way that they're going to target some of their audiences. And so really updating data becomes even more complex because you have these different factors at play. So just as an example, we'll see on these 3 different retail channels, there's a lot of retail specific attributes that consumers are searching by. So, across these 3 channels, you see 21 unique attributes, for instance. Only 1 attribute is actually repeated across all 3 retailers. And even the rank and order in which these attributes appear is really different. So you really have to think about your product data, not just in terms of the product, but also the channel through which you're selling it. And if you go to the next slide, when you think about this in terms of just one product and the different types of channels you have to set it up for, it becomes really difficult to think about in terms of your whole portfolio. It's impossible to maintain essentially without automation.
That's where we come into play. You need a software solution to be able to do this. You need a way of standardizing your process and creating repeatable processes because, like Syra just pointed out, there is a lot of change that's happening between consumers changing their habits and between your product itself evolving to meet those habits, and then where you're getting that data out to becomes another complication. As Syra mentioned, how different retailers will have different values of the type of data that they want to receive. They want to receive different types of data. They also changed their requirements too. And that's the other part about this that you have to factor in, is the fact that if you look at what Amazon did last year, they changed their requirements on brands 167 times. Walmart changed theirs 31 times. Target 160 times, all just last year. And for Target, that was a 4-time increase over the last 2 years combined. So not only do you have all this product content that's changing, not only does it have to be changed for different retailers are changing their requirements on you, and it's happening at a faster and faster rate. So again, automation really is being the key to the game here. That process of publishing, it's not simple. It's not as easy as just saying, okay, I've got a new product image and now I'm going to go publish it onto a website like you're posting a blog article. No, there's a whole process that gets involved for most brand manufacturers that we work with, which is where our workflow capabilities are so important because, yes, product needs to get updated. Either requirements change because of the retailer, or we have reformatted our solution for how we're making this product, or we're seeing something in the market that makes us want to update this product information. Well, that kicks off the entire process that you're looking at here, which is a rough outline of this. Copy needs to be created. Top off, rich media attributes need to be added to this, maybe from a third-party agency. All of that change has to be reviewed. That has to be reviewed by people within the marketing team. It might be reviewed by some executives. And then there might be a legal and regulatory step that has to be reviewed. All of that happens before the syndication step, the actual sending of that data to the retailer. A lot of brands that we work with think about the syndication piece. How am I getting that content to the retailer as the most important point of this process? And we at Salsify spend a lot of time educating around how activation is much, much more than that. And you have to do this at scale with a software solution and a process that you truly understand. Outsourcing this type of thing really just doesn't get it done because you're talking about a lot of different steps here. You're talking about a level of retail approval where the retailer, if you're not meeting those requirements, will send you back your data and say, hey, you have to fix this. Well, that can sometimes kick this process off all over again. And so having good mechanisms for being able to receive that feedback from the retailer, being able to send that data to the retailer correctly the first time, and being able to send complete data so that, again, we're all about meeting consumer demands. Your products are going to be showing up for those attribute searches that the consumers are using to find products. This is where you need to have the partnership of Label Insight and Salsify working together to help you optimize your digital shelf strategy. So Saira, talk to us a little bit more about the value proposition here of what Label Insight is going to allow businesses to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we've talked a lot about some of the barriers that brands face. I'd love to even see how, on that poll, how some of the audience has thought about it before.
Yes, thank you. Do I queue that up? Is that something I have the power to do here?
No, I think Lauren is on it.
Okay, it's coming. I'm excited. The anticipation is building.
Well, while we're getting that up and running, I can kind of talk through what I think, at least. I mean, both of us,
okay.
the way that
yeah,
kind of framing the barriers that brands face today, ultimately it feels like it boils down to two things. One is that you have to have great data to connect with consumer need states, but brands also need to update and activate on that data regularly, right? And at Label Insight, we've kind of solved both of these problems by focusing on data intelligence at scale. So the brands that we work with today will take all the great product metadata that we have, they'll combine it with insights on market trends and consumer search, and they have full control of all the decisions on attributes while they're doing this, and then ensure that that's regularly delivered to platforms like Salsify so that they can future-proof their business for e-commerce growth.
Yeah, that's a great handoff. So if you think of the fact that Label Insight is where you're going to get the complete view of your product data, you're going to be able to make sure it's staying up to date. It's with Salsify that you're going to be able to take that data, create a streamlined process to really optimize your digital shelf management of optimizing that content, customizing that content for every endpoint that you want to deliver that content out to, and then syndicate that content out there to those different touch points where your consumers are actually going to be interacting with it. So think about Label Insight providing you that full and enriched data that you need around your attributes that your product qualifies for. Salsify will customize that for you with the retailer requirements and make sure it's syndicated out to every one of those different destinations as efficiently as possible. All right, and we've got our poll here. Hopefully everybody can see this. It looks like meeting retailer requirements is the most time-consuming part of this process for our audience. Doesn't come as a huge shock to me. Anybody who's been in this business for a little while knows how difficult it can be to stay up to date with those requirements and customize your content to every one of those endpoints.
Yeah, and you see definitely like close behind that, it's keeping the content current as well as the time-consuming process of delivering that content to retailers. So definitely all of these things are related, and we can see that, these are definitely the problems our brands are, even on the call today, are validating as some of the biggest barriers.
And you've come to the right place, because Label Insight and Salsify are what we think are best-in-class solutions to overcoming those barriers. So let's talk a little bit, now that we've talked about the solutions, we've talked a little bit about the barriers themselves, let's talk about what that opportunity to win the consumers can actually look like when you are leveraging these different types of tools properly.
Yeah, I think the best way to do that is honestly to walk through a specific product example together. So this is an example of a sunscreen product that qualifies for some really great attributes based on consumer need states. So you'll see things like oil-free, fragrance-free, paraben-free. In fact, fragrance-free is one of the top trending attributes in the last month. It had a 2,000% growth just from the last month. So you definitely know, based off of insights, these are some really key keywords or pieces of information that this product should definitely include. But when you go on Walmart.com and the consumer searches for something like mineral sunscreen paraben-free, the product's actually not showing up in any of the top search results. And that's because the product isn't actually claiming paraben-free or any one of these other attributes on their product.
So it's about claiming the proper attributes so that your product is showing up in those searches. And then it's also about considering how that information is showing up to the consumer. It's great if you can know that your product is paraben free, you're claiming that attribute, you're passing that attribute out to Walmart. But if all the consumer is seeing is a bunch of text, okay, this isn't bad. Better to have information than to have nothing. But this type of data, this can be used to build out really rich media experiences that we like to call enhanced content, or you might have heard it called A+ content. It's the below the fold experience that really builds out an experience for the consumer. And when we say experiences for the consumers, we're talking images, we're talking videos, we're talking 360s, we're talking about engaging interactive experiences that go beyond just telling the story with text, but actually give you the full experience of what this product represents as a brand. Enhanced content is really where you can start to sell your brand. And that, although we talked earlier about how consumers start their searches now for products based on attributes, it's really the brand experience that's going to keep the consumer with you once you've won them by optimizing your product pages and your search engine and your media buying around the attributes. Consider this the evolution in your story. And you can look at the results here just to see the fact that this strategy works. Enhanced content on product pages can increase on average in our network, an average of 5 to 10% of conversion rate, incremental lift. That can be significant depending on how much traffic's getting to those product pages. And again, this is our industry average. My roots are in enhanced content, and I can tell you there's a very wide spectrum of how brands leverage these tools. Some of them can build beautiful, beautiful product pages like this and get conversion rates even higher than 5 to 10%. So something to be considering in terms of how you're leveraging this data and how you're building out these brand experiences on your product page. Another type of experience that, yes, Salsify has a solution to help you with. But Sarah, talk to us a little bit more about, kind of how this product attribution can improve discovery on the product page.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the example of the visuals because you can definitely see how it becomes a lot more engaging. I think the other part of it is really you want to have the right content, the attribution on the page. So things like paraben-free, vegan, non-GMO, these are all attributes that this product could add. Even something like is unscented, just making those really clear connections so that, the things that the consumer was actually searching on, so like paraben-free sunscreen, shows up and they can make the connection on the product detail page that, hey, this product actually meets my needs. Again, it goes back to those need states. So the brand is helping the consumer actually make the purchase decision by doing that. And we actually worked with a leading snack brand on Amazon to essentially add some of these attributes to both their product title and description. And we definitely found a large boost in conversion because they were able to use this attribution.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing is, although there is an incredible amount of opportunity right now, you're talking about major gaps in products showing up for attribute searches. You can just go on to any one of the retail websites where you're selling your products and take a scroll and see the fact that there are some pretty poorly made product pages out there. This industry is changing very, very quickly. And there's a lot of brands that are now investing in these types of resources. So if you are one of those brands who's already invested in those resources and you're looking to continue to improve that strategy, your head's in the right place. The fact that you're here at this webinar right now, whether you're learning about this stuff for the first time or you're looking to optimize an experience that you've already got underway, you're recognizing the fact that there's a bit of a prisoner's dilemma happening here. If you're not going to be moving on making these types of improvements, your entire business could be at risk in terms of losing market share. Because I think that although the pandemic changed a lot of consumer behaviors, a lot of those changes are now going to stick with that consumer as we start to exit out of this pandemic. So, Sarah, anything you want to add there before we talk a little bit about how our businesses and how our solutions work together?
Yeah, no, I just want to double down on that. I mean, we've seen obviously the rise in e-commerce and the fact that it's a really saturated market out there, right? Like the consumer has at their fingertips every product available to them. They just have to search for it. And so there's a lot of urgency around brands trying to get this product data today because they really need to differentiate themselves to win in the market and keep that consumer loyalty going.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time. There's so much information now out there. And I think when I started in this industry, there used to be a bit of a divide between the brands and the retailers, and retailers wouldn't share data with brands, and brands didn't know, what their consumers actually liked. And all of that is starting to dissolve now, and it can really be beneficial, not just in terms of increasing revenue with the products that you have, but thinking about where's the market going and how can I build out larger assortments of my products to meet those niche needs of consumers. I think you're going to see that as a trend continue to grow. But if you wanted to think about how these different solutions work together, then this is a good example of how we see a lot of our brands and how we recommend a lot of our clients work with the two of us. You've got your source data, whether it's in an ERP system, whether it's on spreadsheets, whether it's in 50 different places or one place, you do have product data, right? What we've demonstrated here is that for most brand manufacturers, there is a lack of full, rich attribute data to go with all of those products. That's what Label Insight's going to provide for you. They're going to help you complete that data, get a full picture of what your products can be qualifying for, and making sure that that data is current and it's optimized. It then could get sent over to Salsify and our Commerce XM platform, where we're going to make sure that that data is customized to meet all of those different retail endpoint requirements. Now, we don't do all that customization ourselves. This is a software platform we're talking about. There's a strategic relationship that works between the consumer and the platform being used, and there's some incredible tools that will allow you to be able to automate this customization. And that's what we would talk about a little bit more if we were going to go into detail around how Salsify solutions work. But I do want to emphasize the fact that this is a software platform with some pretty incredible capabilities when it comes to automation. And then, of course, there's the syndication. The piece that most brands think about is getting that data out there to those different retailers. Just like the customization, just like where you might be set up as a brand manufacturer, syndication itself can be complicated. Different retailers have different ways of wanting to receive their data, just like they have different requirements for how they want to receive that data. Salsify spends a ton of time and a ton of resources on making sure that the way that we can send data to every one of those endpoints is optimized. So again, you've got your source data. Label Insights provides you that full, rich attribute data completion. Salsify allows you to customize that data and then syndicate that data out there to those different retail endpoints. Now, what do you get from all of this? Well, I hope you learned a lot today. Syra and I offered our best views of where the industry is and how we're trying to overcome these barriers, but we did want to give you that kind of Oprah look under your seat experience. And we have a digital shelf audit that we are offering to all of the attendees here on the webinar. It is a value from both Label Insight and Salsify. Syra, why don't you tell them a little bit about what they'll be getting with Label Insight?
Sure. So you can actually learn about your unclaimed search opportunities, essentially. So we'll actually do an audit and provide you with some of the top numbers around search opportunities that you have and what that actually amounts to in terms of missed revenue opportunities.
And with Salsify, the digital shelf audit will cover what I alluded to just a moment ago. Different retailers have different ways that they can receive your content, depending on which type of category you're in, depending what type of market you're trying to send your product data to a retailer for, can determine what type of connection you can have to a retailer. There is no such thing as direct connections everywhere. That's just not the state of the industry. Some retailers will only allow an Excel spreadsheet to be uploaded into their portal. Others do have API connections or FTP connections. The digital shelf audit with Salsify will help you understand for your most important selling channels, what are the best ways of getting that data to those retailers? And then how are you going to overcome the last mile publication step, which we didn't talk at all about today, but is a factor to consider when thinking about optimizing and syndicating content to your digital shelves. So that pretty much concludes our presentation. If you want to take advantage of that digital shelf audit, you can see our contact information there in the bottom right. You can also find us on LinkedIn. Either way, we will get the ball rolling to make sure that that digital shelf audit is completed. I'm sure there are questions. So Lauren, I'm going to turn it back over to you to do a little Q&A session with us.
Yeah, thanks SJ and Syra. Awesome conversation. We've had a ton of questions come in. The first couple are Amazon specific. So SJ, I'll throw these to you first, and then Syra, you can weigh in after. First Amazon related question is there a different behavior for Amazon shopper clicks on items by Amazon.com versus Amazon Fresh?
Is there can you repeat that question? Is there a different behavior between shoppers on Amazon Fresh?
Yeah, for shopper clicks on items by Amazon.com versus Fresh.
I don't know definitively if there are things that we've studied and we've made conclusions about differences in behavior. I will speculate that because you're talking about a different type of shopper, Amazon Fresh as a different type of consumer, a more narrow type of consumer than Amazon generally, that yes, you would expect that there could be differences in product page conversion rates. There might be differences in time spent on page, different types of attribute searches that are being used, different ways of looking for content that would vary between Amazon Fresh and Amazon. I would speculate additionally that if I were selling in both of those channels, your merchandising is going to be more important with Amazon Fresh because you're going there looking for grocery related products. Amazon is a very wide open type of searching experience. So when I say merchandising, what I'm meaning is, are you building out the associations between product A that you're offering and product B that you're offering so that when a consumer is on the product page of product A, they can see in the recommendations product B as well. And so that would be one area that I would just naturally speculate I would focus on for Amazon Fresh to meet those differences in consumer demands than on Amazon. But again, it really comes down to syndicating content out there, using tools like Salsify, Label Insight, and others to understand consumer behavior, search trends, and then building your theories based on what you're seeing in your own specific data. But yes, most certainly I would say that there would be differences in consumer trends. Saira, I'm not sure if you've got any more specific examples between those two different selling channels or not.
No, I would agree with that. I think the product assortment is obviously different on both channels. And so, obviously that just attracts different audiences. So that's one of the big reasons why there are differences between those channels. But that being said, we do definitely think about insights in terms of the Amazon channel more broadly at Label Insight, and we kind of break it down to the product level and the category that product is in, so that you could win both on the Amazon.com channel as well as the Amazon Fresh channel.
Cool, thanks. This one's more search behavior related. So for the Amazon statistics about selecting the first product and the first 3 products, we all know that first row on the Amazon is actually sponsored products. So are shoppers more likely to click on that first row of sponsored products, or are they more likely to scroll down and click on the first row of organic?
When we were looking at that, oh, sorry. I was going to say, when we were looking at that data, we were looking at just the first product results that appear, not in a banner. So that would be those advertisements that you're seeing. Saira, I think that Label Insight offers some really good value when it comes to thinking about how you're using this attribute data for your media spend as well. Maybe you could touch on that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as well. I mean, certainly if your products are relevant, having that ad spend on those high top bidding keywords, it's worthwhile because that is the first thing that consumers see. And so there is a really large ROI in that. But, to the point that SJ was making is, when you think about what's actually relevant to the consumer, so, we had a slide that showed a search around egg-free mayo, for instance. If your top sponsored results are mayonnaise that are not egg-free, the consumer is literally just going to glance over that and move into products that are actually claiming that. And so your campaign is just not going to perform as well. And so, yes, paid media is definitely a winning approach, but you still need to have relevant information on your products to actually make your campaigns perform better.
Yeah, I was gonna actually add that point of the fact that in this industry right now, a lot of those paid spots are displaying products that don't meet the attribute qualification of the search in the first place. So you're back to that same problem. These tactics can apply both to your media spend, and we've seen that robust content on these display ads can dramatically increase conversion of these ads. And likewise, having the attribute data to be able to inform these ads can dramatically increase your conversion rate and significantly increase your return on ad spend. So these principles are applying both to the paid spots as well as to those organic spots. You want to be sending the right attribute data to both. You want to be sending the right type of product content out there to both as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So this one I'm going to direct to you, SJ. It's a Salsify specific question from a customer. I'm a Salsify customer. Are you telling me Salsify will automate my content per retailer?
I'm glad you brought that up. I did want to touch upon this again. I mentioned before, to be clear, Salsify offers a platform, a software platform. That platform has capabilities in it specifically with data transformation that can make it much easier for content to be automated. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So let's say that you have the price data that is stored in your PIM, and that price data is a numeric. But when you want to send that data out to, for instance, and I don't know if this is true or not, Target would require, as part of their retail requirements, that that price value is sent to them along with the dollar sign. But you're storing it in your PIM without that dollar sign. The data transformation of Salsify's syndication capabilities can allow that dollar sign to be automatically inserted when that piece of content is then being sent to Target and not to Walmart, for instance. So you're still able to maintain one unit or one value for price, and then have that unit and that value be customized to meet each one of those retailer requirements in an example like what I just said. Now, if you're looking for hands-on keyboard, somebody to actually make sure that, the other pieces of customization where you're maybe talking about having retail specific product attributes and making sure that there's somebody who's manually overseeing that work and making sure that all those data transformations and all those formulas are properly set up, Salsify does offer managed services to take that work off of your hands. And that is something that we offer as an additional value add in addition to the platform. But I was speaking mostly about our customization, our automated customization capabilities within the technology platform itself, not the actual management and operations of that. Although again, I will say we have managed services that could be purchased for that type of work if you're in a situation where you want to offload that part of your activation process to a third party. So hopefully that answered the question there. And yeah, I guess I'll turn it over for the further questions.
Yeah, so a couple questions came in about the digital shelf audit and how much it costs. The digital shelf audit is free, so no cost associated there. Syra, I've got a couple regulatory questions I think would be best suited for you to answer. One, if we as a brand have chosen not to declare a statement or attribute on our products for regulatory reasons, would Label Insight categorize us automatically?
Yeah, we certainly, use our own technology to determine the set of attributes that we would assign for products, but we also give complete control to the brands that work with us in terms of which attributes they want to select. So if you know you've chosen certain attributes and purposely don't want them declared on your products, that's something you have full control over with Label Insight. You can come in and disable those attributes. Of course, you can review all of the definitions as well. All of our definitions are often based off of USDA and FDA declared guidelines. And we have a lot of nutritional experts in-house to help us manage those. But if you feel like that definition just doesn't apply to your organization, that's totally fair, and you can control turning that off. So before you even syndicate that into your PIM, like Salsify, for instance, you can actually say, hey, I don't want any of my products displaying this, and that wouldn't translate over to Salsify or any one of your PIMs.
Great, thanks. And then the second question around regulatory is, we typically need regulatory approval for any of the data we send into Salsify. How can we manage what Label Insight data goes into Salsify?
Yeah, we really, similar to what I was saying before, we really think about that in terms of attribute management. So we think about how e-commerce and regulatory can very easily collaborate in our platform to make attribute decisions. So, for the e-commerce person, we want to make it really easy to discover and have the conversation with their regulatory teams as to which attributes might help to change some of the growth factors, or really put their products on the map. But the regulatory person, again, has full control to come into the platform, review that information, and make decisions that, hey, this attribute just doesn't make sense for our organization. And that's actually done on, again, an attribute level. So you don't have to sit there and review every single product. You can kind of have those conversations with your regulatory team in a much more general manner, talking about the different attributes that make sense, and then control that for all of your products at once.
Great, thank you. I've got one more for you, Syra, specifically around Label Insight. How how frequently is Label Insight reviewing changes in consumer searches that can then result in new attributes that we have to account for? Monthly cadence, quarterly, yearly, et cetera.
Yeah, we currently do it on a monthly cadence. We use a panel of over 3 million US shoppers across the top 6 retailers. And so we use a monthly cadence essentially to update that data.
SJ, I'm going to give this one to you. How should we think about owning the right attributes on retailers versus putting dollars behind paid search against specific keywords? Do you need both? I think we touched on this a little bit before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's where using a tool like Label Insight can help you to understand, what are the attributes that people are searching for. There are other SEO type of tools that will let you know what are the trends in consumer behaviors and how are people starting to look for my products. The other way to always think about this is you cast the wide net. When it comes to claiming attributes, you want to just say, you might as well claim all of them. The long tail can oftentimes be more profitable than just the base parent term that you might be trying to optimize your product page or your media buying strategies for. So when you think about like, what are the right attributes? Any attribute that your product can qualify for should be considered. It should be logged and it should be syndicated out to your product pages. And so I would say that, you're talking about building out your product descriptions and your below the fold experiences in such a way like what Syra was showing you, where you're claiming all of those different attributes on the product page. And so that when the product page's search is coming up, you're putting those attributes on the product page, at least below the fold. Now, when it comes to optimizing your page titles, when it comes to optimizing your media buying spends, this is where you might want to start thinking about doing some A/B testing, experimenting with 2 different types of product pages, and then seeing which ones are driving better conversion rates. Maybe both of them are, and you want to start to be able to segment your product pages with even more nuanced assortments. But I would say that, ultimately, you want to be investing in both of these areas. You want to be thinking about using tools to help you understand how you want to prioritize your attribute descriptions in terms of what's going into your page titles and in terms of what you're doing with your media buying. But you're going to learn more by starting that process and then looking at that data that you're receiving and seeing what's working and what's not working, than spending too much time, in the hangar building out the strategy before you actually get it out there and testing it with the consumers themselves on those retail sites.
Anything to add there, Syra?
Yeah, I would just say it's like, it's essentially a balance between having that comprehensive data set and having the ability to prioritize which attributes to focus on. And really, so you want to have insights essentially that you can access to understand, hey, these are the attributes or pieces of data that make sense for me to focus on because this is how the market is changing. So again, both doing A/B testing, but then also kind of constantly experimenting and finding new ways to update your data because things are going to change and you want to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I would add one last thing is, your products as well as the consumer knows the products. So, the best place to lead from this is what does your gut tell you? What are the most important attributes about your products? You probably have more legacy information in your head. There's a ton of information in the company where if you took what you think is the place that you should be focusing on and you compare that with data that would show consumer trends, you'd probably find that there's a pretty decent alignment there.
Syra, this one's really category specific to pet food. And I'll be interested to hear your insights on this one. Do you think need states would change frequently in the pet food category, or do you expect them to be quite stable?
That's a great question. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but we definitely have worked with pet food brands. In fact, we were contracted with a large pet food brand that actually have found that their product categories or attributes are changing pretty often, especially because of a lot of the innovation that's constantly being put out into the market. And so I do think, even for pet food, you'll see a lot of changes, both on a monthly as well as definitely on an annual cadence.
This one's more about SEO. So back to SEO. We currently are working with a digital SEO agency that handles keywords. How are Salsify and Label Insight different from that? How do they complement that work with the agency? So Syra, you want to jump into this first, and then SJ can provide his perspective too?
Yeah, sure. We at Label Insight, we really see SEO agencies as a partner, not really a competitor. The big difference is that, Label Insight and Salsify both are technology platforms, right? We're software solutions, and we can scale the information that you receive in ways that an SEO agency just can't. So our product metadata, first of all, is some of the most granular in the market. We have over 20,000 attributes per product. And if you think about that in terms of an agency doing that work, it would be incredibly manual to try to figure out for each product, what is the attributes does it actually qualify for, and what is the selection of attributes I have available to me. So we're actually a technology solution that's able to scale that. So that's one really large difference. And then again, the other aspect of it is being able to deliver that content at scale. Again, in a manual process, you're kind of doing this product by product, but being able to apply all that information at once and deliver it to your PIM like Salsify really saves you in terms of speed to market. And in today's e-commerce world where things are so fast paced and move so quickly, you really need to be able to kind of get information on digital shelves as quickly as possible.
Yeah, my first response to that question was similar to Syra's. Salsify is a software platform. Label Insight is a software platform. An SEO agency is a service that you're using. There's a great partnership that can be struck between all three, where the SEO agency will probably give you some good information about what are consumers searching for and what are the keywords that we really want to be focused on. Label Insight and Salsify can help you make sure that with Label Insight, you're getting all that attribute data out so you know which products are matching to those consumer searches. And then Salsify, again, is helping you optimize that content, store that data together in one central source of truth, and then syndicate that data out there to the different retailers for the product pages to be compiled and then appearing on the retailer site. And again, with that syndication piece, it's a complicated issue. A lot of people think that there's just an automation that can happen to every single retailer where I sell. The automation that Salsify focuses on is automating the customization of the data. The sending of the data sometimes, again, has retailer limitations on it where there is no way of automatically sending the data to the retailer. It's more just the fact that you have to have what we call it a templated export. It's the customized content that's coming in to meet those retailer requirements that contains the Label Insight data that's informed by the SEO agency and is produced as a customized spreadsheet automatically for the business, the brand manufacturer, to then be able to send to the retailer, possibly through a retailer portal, because that's all that particular retailer will make available for you. So, that's the difference between kind of how services work and solutions work. And again, if you're in the type of situation where you want to have services manage all of this, between Salsify and Label Insight, we can offer you that right balance of the software solutions and then the managed services so that you can offload that in a similar way that an SEO agency would offload the keyword research and the buying of the different keywords and managing your budgets for you. So that is a model that you can be looking at using with our solutions.
Anything to add to that, Syra?
Oh, I think we both hit the same things and pretty comprehensively.
So we're almost at the top of the hour. We've got a couple more questions, but we'll answer those via email. You can expect a response within 24 hours back. I want to be respectful for everyone's time, so we'll wrap it here. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate you again spending this time, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you very much.